But so, is this, I mean, does the government have to pay us for these? Where does the takings clause come in? Does it protect us at all? Does it get worse? What are your thoughts?
It gets, you better buckle up, buckaroo.
Oh, yeah.
It gets so much worse. We are the Armed Attorneys. Today we're talking about Kamala Harris's stance on gun control. We've heard a lot of commentary about this, but her campaign office keeps kind of changing what they're doing. So we're taking the temperature as of today. This is the today position, but we're going to talk about where she's been, what has been said most recently. Does New York State Rifle and Pistol Association kind of protect us from the Harris? And ultimately, I mean, one of her policy positions is a mandatory gun buyback. I don't think the government can buy back things they never owned, but we're going to be talking about the takings clause just a little bit to see where Kamala Harris' square peg fits in round hole of the Constitution. But before we begin, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting that like button. And so we have this quote that keeps haunting Kamala Harris, but it got scrubbed from the internet.
I will say, I have heard the audio. I could not find it. It is out there somewhere, but not readily available enough for us to find it in time for publication today, because it is largely scrubbed. So we have Kamala Harris in 2019, and she is at one of those, I don't know, gun violence forums where they all sit down and they're like, let's fix it, and it's like not really about the guns at all, but it's just all the liberal politicians. And so
guns are sentient.
I know that's my noise for gun control advocates.
More cat hair.
So anyway, yeah. So cat hair is floating everywhere in the breeze, and they're asking at that point, all of the potential candidates for what became Joe Biden's nomination, what are your gun control bona fides? And so Kamala Harris is nowhere on camera anymore, so I can't find it anywhere, but here's the quote, is talking about a mandatory gun buyback. Specifically, I believe, although as Richard says, she speaks in gypsy quotes, so it can be difficult to decipher, specifically for the AR-15 style rifle. And so here we go. We have to have a buyback program, and I support a mandatory gun buyback program, which, by the way, is the first time I've ever heard a politician say those words ever. So, like, that is how radical left that is.
Yeah.
It's got to be smart. We got to do it in the right way. But there are 5 million assault weapons, at least. Some estimate as many as 10 million. And we're going to have smart public policy that's about taking those off the streets, but doing it the right way. I guess the right way meaning the mandatory way.
The people with guns forcing you to give up your guns. Is that what she means when she
that's
says?
horrifying. Yes, I believe so. And so they have, in recent weeks here, walked that back, because that was Kamala Harris appealing to the left base for potential nomination on the Democratic side back in 2019. Now we have Kamala Harris as the presumptive nominee, although as we speak today, the DNC has not taken place yet for formal nomination. But if we're going to win the center, mandatory gun buyback is probably not the way to do it. But I think we can all expect, and this is why it's still important, that if elected, we're not going to stick with the centrist stuff that got us elected. We're going to take the Joe Biden playbook and throw all the centrist stuff out the window and go back to the radical left stuff now that we're in charge. Right?
Yeah, so that was her quote a couple of years ago. She reaffirmed her commitment just very recently. Let's roll that clip.
Adding to your gun control agenda? Yeah, I think it's a great idea. But I mean, listen, I don't think we lack for great ideas. As I've said many times, we've been having great ideas for decades. The problem is that Congress has not had the courage to act. And that is why, from the beginning, I have said, my agenda includes attempting to get Congress to act, but if they don't within the first 100 days of my administration, I'm going to take executive action. Because what we need is action.
And so we hear from her, if the Congress is not acting within the first 100 days, she is going to take executive action on this stuff. I'm surprised she didn't have one of her famous dialogues like, guns are bad, and they're bad because they're guns, and we all know that if we don't want bad things, then we have to get rid of the guns which are bad. That's what I would expect from her today.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay. Usually she's getting a lot of, I mean, sidebar, I mean, she's drunk all the time, right?
I don't think so.
She's got the shakes. I see him.
Oh my goodness. But I will, for everyone who says that I have vocal fry, which you can all go right to hell, by the way, everyone who's ever commented that, listen to Kamala Harris for 2 seconds and talk to me about vocal fry.
But you also don't cackle.
I do cackle, but just not here. I love
The microphones.
I love a good cackle.
The microphones
like, you know
have these things where they'll just blow the fuse.
Yeah, it's an anti-cackle device. You can't do it on camera here.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the topic at hand now. Does Bruin guarantee your right to an AR-15, Richard?
Yes, gun to head, yes, I believe it does.
Are the courts going to say that it does?
Half of them are not going to say that.
That's right. I mean, that is, I mean, in part the issue at hand here is that we have, and we've talked about this recently on the channel, we have courts who are trying to weasel their way out of Bruin. Essentially, I mean, and I can see it in my mind's eye being like, well, this isn't all guns.
Right.
You can still have your handguns. You can still have your shotguns. No one's ever said you're allowed to have every kind of firearm, every kind of weapon out there. This is more akin to weapons of war, military weapons.
Well, I mean, yeah,
I can see the opinions writing themselves.
Yeah, but
already.
you revisit the discussion we had just on this previous Monday, the statutes that are getting challenged in Vermont. We see how the court, first they say, hey, this isn't protected by the Second Amendment, so we don't even need to apply Bruin. But if it is Bruin, then, or this isn't in common use, that we go there. So then we go past that. Okay, we'll apply Bruin, and they'll find some non-historical analog. I mean, they just don't faithfully apply Bruin. So, I mean, we see what the extreme is.
Right. And for everyone saying, aha, but in the year of our Lord 2024, who wrote the dissent in Cargill? Sotomayor?
Yeah.
Kagan.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't remember. Sotomayor. The dissent said that
Common use.
AR-15s are in the common
Yeah,
use.
Heller Miller, we're good.
Right? However, the dissent is the dissent. The dissent is dicta. The exact same justice who authored that dissent could pick up and write an opinion that says, these aren't common use, and there's no stare decisis on the wording of dissent, right? I mean, there's just,
No, and even the Supreme Court isn't held to their own.
No.
They're not even held to their own precedent. They can completely change their mind.
They do anything they want. That's the Supreme Court. They do whatever they want. But so, yes, I mean, it was an interesting tidbit that we saw there. Does it really help us in our common use argument here? Not particularly, because the Supreme Court is the Supreme Court, and dissents are dissents, and dicta is dicta, right?
But if we are applying the common use, let's say we still have a majority in the Supreme Court, and they are applying the common use test, and there's no indication that they intend on getting rid of that framework. I mean, we've had that running for 100 years, reaffirmed recently. If we are applying the common use test, and we're faithfully applying New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, AR-style rifles protected.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And by the way, anyone who hears us being negative about what we think some courts might do, that's obviously not our personal opinions about how we want the world to be. It is just quite simply our pessimistic lawyer opinions about what some courts who don't faithfully apply the law could do. Now, I think an interesting note would be, let's say that we have a court who says, not covered by Bruin, not in the common use. You get to the government mandates a buyback, but we're still going to pay you. It's not a confiscation, it's a buyback. But so is this, I mean, does the government have to pay us for these? Where does the takings clause come in? Does it protect us at all? Does it get worse? What are your thoughts?
You better buckle up, buckaroo.
Yeah.
It gets so much worse.
I agree. Go on. Would you takings?
For the public use, yes, you are compensated, but if you are, confiscating for the purpose of preventing harm, think rum runners, think people who had stills back in.
Yeah, environmental things get confiscated all the time, and it's like, well, if you prevented harm to the environment, then it's not a taking for which you have to provide just compensation.
Yeah, no compensation. And we have these cases, they come from Prohibition era. We didn't have alcohol outlawed. We outlawed alcohol. Government went in, took everybody's manufacturing equipment, and they said, guess what? This stopped a public harm, so we don't have to pay you for it. I imagine that same argument is going to get made here, and that's
I mean, that's the argument, right? And here, I mean, we're proposing a buyback, but you can imagine that, like, you're gonna be required to turn in a gun along with accessories that ultimately you spent, $1,000 on, and they're gonna be like, here's your $200.
If anything.
Right, if anything. And then you're like, well, that's a taking. And then the argument that the government's going to have is, no, it's not. It's going to stop a party from engaging in a harmful activity. We didn't have to pay you anything. We did not violate the takings clause. Have a good day, sir.
I mean,
Scary.
I guess it's better than like Chinese communists kill you, bill your family for the bullet. I guess we're not there.
Is that our standard? We're just not Chinese communists yet?
I mean, I'm trying to glass half full of the situation. I just don't like it.
No, I don't like it. And I mean, realistically, is the Congress ever going to pass such a law? No. I don't even believe that she could get this done conceivably through executive action, but she could try.
Yeah, I mean, as close as she could get is probably funding it. Mm-hmm. Directing a whole bunch of funding for the buyback. So, I mean,
Sure.
that kind of takes away our, our argument about, not getting compensated. Kind of undermines what we just said. But
Like, if I'm going to spend my money on guns, it's going to be on my own guns, not on the government paying someone else for their confiscated gun.
hopefully,
It's my tax dollars for that.
I mean, if it's anything like any other buyback we've seen in any major city, they get pieces of garbage and 3D printed stuff that, they make a return on these things.
I know. So, this is something to, I think, although this a unrealistic fallen from the coconut tree pipe dream, should we see a Harris administration, it is going to be the most radical gun control by executive action we've ever seen, and the litigation is going to be an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
Thank God we're criminal defense attorneys.
But we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video.
And always leave us a comment below, and don't miss us every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 5 p.m. Central. Until next time, with Arms Trains.